judgment has been reserved in the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria today. This is in the dispute between the family of the late former Zambian President Edgar Lungu and the Zambian government. The family challenged a full bench ruling that allowed the Zambian government to repatriate his body for state funeral. Advocate Tembeka Ngcukaitobi, representing the family, says the binding principles allow a government to override the interests of a spouse, which he argues is a problem.
Interests of a spouse can be overridden by a government. In this case, it happens to be a foreign government, but by a government. Now, that we say is a fundamental problem. The second one is that a contract, my learned friend characterizes differently, over a dead body or over a corpse, is a recognized species of contract in South African law. Now, those two principles, outside of the issue of prospects of success, those two issues are legal principles that will forever be relied upon. And you know, one of the reasons, Justice Libaka, is that they will say this was a full court decision and it has an elevated status for future disputes. And they can ignore Justice Mokgwatleng's judgment as a single judge who decided a fact-specific case. But they can't ignore this judgment because this is a judgment given by 3 judges of the Pretoria High Court. And so those principles will remain with us, whatever happens. And that's why we ask that you kindly refer the matter for determination in the Supreme Court of Appeal.
All right, now SABC News reporter Canny Maphanga has been following the court proceedings and joins us live in studio to share a bit more on this. Good afternoon, Canny. Thank you for joining us. Now, we've heard there from legal counsel for the wife of the late Mr. Lungu, stating, among others, that you cannot contract over a corpse, that in such an instance, the law of succession would kick in. If there's no will, then it's interstate succession. Just unpack that argument for us.
Okay. Good afternoon to you, Mfundo, and to the viewers at home. At the outset, the original judgment found in the main that the Zambian government was entitled to repatriate the former president, his remains, for the purposes of a state funeral and burial. And the reasons, main findings it made was that there was an enforceable agreement between the parties about Zambia being the final resting place of the late president. Then, of course, they used Section 177 of Zambia's constitution, which promotes its public interest, to reach the conclusion that the personal wishes of the family cannot outweigh the interests of the nation at large. And it is against that backdrop that the court ruled that the remains must be repatriated or surrendered off to the Zambian government for that process to begin. But now the appeal, the issue that is being had with respect to the question you're raising about the contract, is that the Lungu family are arguing that you cannot base a contract or an agreement on a corpse, that autonomous right belongs to the family, the loved ones, and in this specific case, the widow of the late president. So the autonomous right belongs to Esther Lungu, and it is only she who can decide what must happen to the remains of the former president. That right cannot be transferred over to the Zambian government. There's also a tension between which laws should have been applied in this particular matter, if it was South African law or if it was Zambian law. We see the counsel on behalf of the Lungu family, Advocate Ngcukaitobi SC, arguing that it is unsettling for a foreign state to approach a South African court and ask it to determine the issues based on Zambian law and not South African law. He emphasizes that because the Lungu family was in South Africa, whether it be temporary or they plan to stay for a long time, it's not really the substance of the issue. But the fact that they were here, the supreme law here is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, and against that backdrop, the widow of the former late president enjoyed constitutional rights that should have been taken into consideration as well when the courts reached that conclusion. So they're saying that there are a number of questions of laws and principles that need to be resolved, not at the courts of first instance, but by the appellate courts, because they've been confronted with this situation for the first time, where you're seeing a former head of state in South Africa with his loved ones. He passes away in South Africa, and then the family decides that they want to bury him here, but there's also public interest rights in Zambia that they argue entitles them to bury him in his homeland. So because of the questions in the air, which Advocate Ngcukaitobi argues run the risk of the deprivation of the rights of widows with respect to their spouses, needs to be resolved in the appellate court before this issue can be decided as final. So they're stating that for the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria to grant leave to appeal, it doesn't necessarily have to agree that reasonable prospects of success exist if it goes to the SCA. Just the interest of justice permit for this matter to be heard by another court if there's a slight chance that they may reach a different conclusion on all these questions of laws.
Undoubtedly, there are a lot of legal questions to be answered. One wonders if it wouldn't even make its way to the Constitutional Court if already we're hearing questions around the constitutionality of attempting to interpret the laws of another country in our country. But then judgment has been reserved, so what happens at this point?
Well, we expect the full bench to be able to give a decision soon. If it's reserved, it means that there is no date yet. But you may remember with the main application, it took them less than a week to give a decision. So we can expect that they'll inform the families quite soon of the outcome. If leave to appeal is granted, it means that this issue will now head to the SCA for an adjudication on the matter. If leave to appeal is denied, based on the pattern that we have seen, the family hasn't given up quite easily on their fight to bury their loved one here in South Africa. They still have the option of turning or petitioning the SCA to, I guess, appeal that denial if that is the case. And we can see that that appeal process may take some time before we see finality to this issue of the final resting place of the former president. But we have seen in the past in highly contentious issues such as this, where we've seen with the Zulu Nation, the succession battle, that in the Gauteng High Court in Pretoria as well, where the presiding officer didn't feel that there was reasonable prospects of success, but still granted leave to appeal to the SCA in the interest of justice and in the greater interest of the nation, the Zulu Nation. So it is possible that even if the full bench doesn't agree, that they still may grant leave to appeal just in the interest of justice and for these questions to be resolved and brought to finality.
Canny, we trust you to keep us abreast of all developments pertaining to this case. That's SABC News senior reporter Canny Maphanga there.